for tuning in to Lunta Television. It's time for a news bulletin coming to you live from Bishop Nerva Media Center. Today you're with me, Elena Perry. The headlines at this half hour. Pope Francis praises outgoing African Church, discerning what God is telling us today. President Chakwera expresses commitment to ensure the National Youth Service achieves its purpose. Government says Africa Internet Governance Forum meeting to benefit African countries to be independent. And in other news, half of Somalia's population hungry as drought bites. We have reports to these and other latest stories, so stay tuned in. We begin with a story that Pope Francis has said he prays that the Holy Spirit inspires the Pan-African Catholic Theological and Pastoral Network and calls a gathering of theologians, religious men and women, lay people and bishops in Nairobi this week to discern what God is telling them today, which is a sign of hope. The Holy Father said coming together to discern what God is telling them today is already a sign of an outgoing African church. In a video message to the Pan-African Catholic Theological and Pastoral Network published on Tuesday, the Pope raised the encounter, saying it is a sign of hope that theologians, laity, priests, men and women, religious bishops have taken the initiative to work together. Bernard Mwanza reading a Vatican News report.
The Holy Father expressed his delight to hear about the Second Pan-African Catholic Congress on Theology, Society and Pastoral Life being held at the Catholic University of East Africa in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, from 19th to 22nd July. The Pope told them to continue their efforts. Impressed by Africans' faith and resilience, Pope Francis recalled his visits to Africa and said he has consistently been impressed by the faith and resilience of these people. The Holy Father stated that the wisdom of the African ancestors reminds people for this important call that mountains never meet, but people do. The Pope then invited the Congress participants to continue together, accompanying, growing and helping one another. Before giving his blessing, Pope Francis concluded by praying the Holy Spirit inspire them and that parts emerge from this Congress that the Church needs, parts of missionary, ecological conversion, peace, reconciliation and transformation of the whole world.
A Catholic priest, Father Thomas Muhosha, who was recently convicted over the murder of a person with albinism, MacDonald Masambuka, has died. The Episcopal Conference of Malawi Secretary General, Father Henry Saindi, has confirmed of the death through a statement saying he died at Zomba Central Hospital. Father Muhosha was among the 11 suspects found guilty in the case of the abduction and murder of Masambuka, and the High Court last month consequently handed him a 30-year jail sentence. Last week, Father Muhosha was admitted to the hospital over mental issues. Meanwhile, Malawi Prison Service spokesperson Jimmy Shawa says the cause of death for Father Muhosha is not yet known. He says doctors are working to establish the cause of the death. May his soul rest in peace. The state president, Dr. Lazarus Chakwera, has described the National Youth Service as a timely intervention that will perfect the country's youth empowerment drive, as it offers a multi-pronged approach to offer profitable ventures to young people through vocational training and the capitalization of respective trades of choice. Making the remarks earlier today at Chikonde Primary School ground in Neno, when he presided over the launch of the National Youth Service, Chakwera expressed his commitment to see it achieve its purpose. Money amounting to 3.5 billion Malawi kwacha was set aside by the Ministry of Finance to empower unemployed youth to be self-reliant through small-scale businesses. Tandwem Zumara has details in this report.
In his remarks during the launch, Minister of Youth Richard Chimwendo Banda noted that the National Youth Service will help in reaching out to 20,000 youths per year who will be given startup capital at the end of their training. He then urged youths in the country to prepare well to use the money of the service for its intended purpose. Presiding over the launch, President Lazarus Chakwera said the National Youth Service will train thousands of unemployed youth with marketable skills and connect them to opportunities for productive and profitable work. He said the National Youth Service has everything for every youth regardless of their sex, age or education background. Chakwera also expressed confidence that the service will empower the youth nationwide through various training options that include crop, livestock, fish and poultry farming, information, communications and technology (ICT), carpentry, welding, tailoring and renewable technologies. Chakwera also noted that the program has been tailored according to particular localities where young people are given freedom to choose trades that align with their needs, competences, and favorable geographical and climate practicalities. He then assured of his commitment to see the National Youth Service achieve its purpose, saying that it is why it has been linked to the National Economic Empowerment Fund, NEF, and Technical, Entrepreneurial and Vocational Education and Training Authority, TVETA, hoping that this will create the right synergies for growth and sustenance of the program. For Lunta News in Lilongwe, this is Tandwem Zumara.
Center for Human Rights and Rehabilitation, CHRR Executive Director Michael Kayatsa has said although the Constitution of Malawi guarantees the freedom of expression, government continues to suppress it through the application of archaic and draconian laws. Giving an example of Chisambele's case in an interview, Kayatsa stressed that the Constitution declares internet as a human right which gives freedom to everyone to express what they feel even online. He added that people are supposed to be free in using the internet, but that's not the case in Malawi, hence the call for government to uphold freedom of expression in full respect to the Constitution of Malawi. Bridget Monoka reports.
According to Kayatsa, digital rights are closely related to fundamental rights such as freedom of expression, access to information and privacy. He said these rights enshrined in the United Nations 1948 Declaration for Human Rights now and also find application online and are no longer restricted to the offline space. Kayatsa further elaborated that they have documented over 16 cases since Tonse-led administration took office, but as civil society organizations, they are committed to ensure full respect for fundamental freedoms enshrined in the country's constitution.
It's true, and it's a huge concern for us that the government is using archaic laws, draconian laws, to punish dissent. We are saying that because we have seen a number of people being arrested, online users who are simply exercising their right, to freedom of expression, being arrested simply for, expressing their opinions. We are saying that that is contrary to the spirit of the Constitution, because the Constitution has made it clear that everyone has a right to freedom of expression, and this right applies not only offline but even online. The United Nations in 2016 declared the internet a human right. What that means is that people should be free to use the internet without any restrictions, without any hindrances.
Concurring with Kayatsa, digital media expert Jimmy Kainja, who is also a senior lecturer in media, communication and cultural studies at Chancellor College, University of Malawi, said that there are certain laws which are being used to arrest people unnecessarily, therefore calling for a review since some of them were reviewed ages ago.
The penal law mentioned is part of law that regulatory laws that we have. So as mentioning, for example, some are archaic. Some laws, if you look at the penal code, penal code is old. So there are regulations that have to be revised in view of the internet age in which we are in. Communications Act was revised in 2016, initially being enacted in 1998. But in it, there are certain provisions basically that are actually being used to unnecessarily arrest people. And my big one, I think the bigger picture that we have to look at is that, okay, these arrests you can call them targeted, but in most cases, it's been a question of arresting powerless people when they are alleged to have done something against powerful people.
From the Media and Communications Committee of Parliament, Togo Tembo said most of the laws are archaic and made during the one-era regime, but the current government, being a listening one, treasures democracy and freedom of expression.
Most of these laws are archaic. They were made back in the days during the one-era regime, during the times of Kamuzu Banda, and you quite understand that the regime at that time, the government at that time, really wanted to stay in power, but then it's really against democracy at this point in time. So that's why this needs to be repealed so that we can move along with the rest of the world.
It is over 20 years since the establishment of Malawi's first internet service provider, ISP, but the country still lags behind its neighbors in terms of the promotion and protection of digital rights because of its legal and policy frameworks. For Lunta News in Lilongwe, this is Bridget Manoka.
Meanwhile, Small Media Advocacy Manager Hannah McLean has commended the effort CHRR is making in enhancing digital rights. In an interview with Lunta Television after a workshop they jointly organized with CHRR today on using innovative ways to enhance digital rights advocacy at the UPR, McLean acknowledged that a lot has to be done in order to make sure that freedom of expression is respected, as they have been witnessing that several people are being arrested after expressing their views. Here's part of what McLean said.
We've been working with CHRR. They are a local human rights group based in Malawi, and they have done a lot of active lobbying on the Access to Information Act, and this has been through the UPR. And then, as we all know, an ongoing draft has been made on the Access to Information Act, and we're actually meeting with some of your members of Parliament tomorrow, as well as the Attorney General, to talk to them about digital rights and how this act can be implemented correctly, and how civil society can also be happy with the progress around freedom of information. But we're really excited that they're quite open to meet with us, and then we'll be engaging with them and to figure out what is everyone's understanding on digital rights.
Minister of Information and Digitization, also government spokesperson Gospel Kazako, has said the Africa Internet Governance Forum that is holding its conference in Lilongwe will benefit Africa to be independent and create its own fabric and minimize relying on European countries in accessing the Internet. The minister was speaking at the sidelines of Africa Internet Governance Forum meeting, which is underway in Lilongwe. He said Africa has realized to stand as one unit to negotiate things to do with Internet that will help to achieve its agenda of 2063 of having an Africa which will be self-reliant. Kazako said if African countries combine and put together their resources, it will help to have easy access to matters of ICT and recognize the challenges that could be faced. Kazako explains more.
This conference is going on very well, and just now we have been talking about the cross-border agreements, cross-border trade, cross-border communication. You know, Malawi is not an island, just like Africa is not an island. So what we're doing here at African Union level is to make sure that there is a good unison, there's a good talking, discussing and agreeing, so that we're aware of where we're going. We need to be doing our things as Africans, because for a long time so many things have been done on our behalf. You might wish to know that most of the African countries were not there during the first industrial revolution. They were absent during the second industrial revolution, and even during the third. Most of the African countries were not there. What it meant then is that most of the issues, most of the policies, most of the operations that were done at that time were done on our behalf. And this has created an Africa that is disjointed, an Africa that cannot talk to each other, an Africa that is not doing its things or her things as a unit. So what we are doing now under the banner of African Union, as I said, is to make sure that we are natives in the same civilization. We are aware who is doing what, we are aware how to communicate, we are aware what is happening elsewhere, but at the same time, we are also creating one currency of communication. We need to know so that when we have problems, we should also be able to know how we can tackle those problems. When we have challenges, we should be able to know as a unit, as one union, we should be able to sit down, talk about them, and make sure that in the process we are able to eradicate or to prune out certain challenges that will impinge the process of making Africa very fluent on the matters of ICT and digitalization.
If you've just joined us, you're watching News on Lontar TV. Let's take a look at the headlines before we proceed. Pope Francis praises outgoing African Church, discerning what God is telling us today. President Chakwera expresses commitment to ensure the National Youth Service achieves its purpose. Government says Africa Internet Governance Forum meeting to benefit African countries to be independent. And in other news, half of Somalia's population hungry as drought bites. Moving on, community members and stakeholders have expressed satisfaction with the Evangelical Association of Malawi EAM Gender-Based Violence GBV Drive Tamazi and Cancer project. The project seeks to alleviate gender-based violence through, among others, providing people with platforms to openly mouth and ensuring culprits are prosecuted. It extends to the provision of mobile courts in conjunction with the judiciary. Helbert Katanda reports from Karonga.
The initiative is being implemented in the areas of traditional authorities Makaogo, Kyungu and Skilupula in Karonga district. In an interview on Tuesday, after court deliberations at Ngisi Primary School in the area of traditional authority Makaogo, Group Village Head Welix Mwandambo said the project has amplified knowledge on gender-based violence.
Antu samali kuziwa kuti nsikana niwo kuti na Yesu ndi muntu kuti atakola muntu mweni kuti aendeze dziko la Malawi. Amafuna kuti ingati yaindi mwana nsikana atenge chuma ku muntu wina amene ndi chuma. Koma pakali pano malinga ndi nkani za mabungu amene tinawo munga Evangelical Association of Malawi amatiphunzitsa mnumizi kuti zimene zisabwino yayi mwana wa nsikana afunaso na Yesu atani apuzire.
Karonga District Principal Gender Officer Martha Kalumbi said the project has eased mobility. She said apparently cases of gender-based violence have decreased, with reported cases surging.
From the community members, it has been so beneficial because most of the things that they were not able to access because of limited resources from government offices has been made easy with the coming of Detesting Cancer. These days we've been frequenting this area because Detesting Cancer was able to support our mobility and the resources to be able to reach out to these communities with various activities.
During the court proceedings, First Grade Magistrate Julius Kalambo made 3 judgments, of which 2 cases were about gender-based violence. For Lunta News in Karonga, I'm Hilbert Katanda.
A group of some civil society organizations is set to hold nationwide demonstrations on the 28th of July, which they are calling action against presidential immunity, API, with the aim of forcing President Lazarus Chakwera to trim presidential powers as he promised during the campaign period. The development comes after an answered letter which Seeded wrote to the said president asking him to direct the Attorney General and other stakeholders to revise Section 91 of the Constitution within 14 days. Phyllis Chizombe has details in this report.
Speaking during a press briefing in Lilongwe at Crown Hotel, the Civil Rights Joint Group told journalists that Chakwera should move to remove the immunity as he promised during campaign period or face nationwide demonstrations. Different quarters are pushing Chakwera to take off immunity. Fresh calls from the former president Peter Mutharika and Chakwera's vice president Saulos Kraus Chilima, who told journalists 2 weeks ago that he and Chakwera agreed to scrap off immunity once getting into power, as doing so is going to pave way for the Anti-Corruption Bureau to start investigating the country presidents. In his remarks at the briefing, Phumzile Mvula of Social Evolution Movement said there are a little or no positive outcomes in fighting corruption in the country, as government officials are mostly involved in corruption cases. Seated Executive Director Sylvester Namiwa pointed out that Minister of Natural Resources Eisenhower Nkaka must be fired and investigated on how he purchased the vehicle he is using.
Now, the good thing is that the Anti-Corruption Bureau has confirmed that they are probing the Honorable Minister. We therefore challenge Dr. Lazarus Chakwera that in the same vein he handled Newton Gambala, the former Minister of Energy. In the same spirit he handled the former Minister of Lands, Kezi Nsugwa. Honorable Nkaka should be treated with the same yardstick. Honorable Nkaka should be fired immediately. By the way, should the president drag feet up to the 28th, after presenting the petition, we'll go straight, because we know the house of Dr. Honorable Nkaka. So we'll go straight and get our cars there.
Meanwhile, Center for Democracy Watch leader Levi Luwemba has asked the Malawi Regulatory Authority, MACRA, to stop selective justice on broadcasting license revocations, where it has revoked some media houses' licenses. The organizations are Center for Democracy and Economic Initiative CEDET, Pan-African Civic Educators Network PASNET, Social Evolution Movement SRM, Center for Democracy Watch CIDWAT, Mzuzu and Kalonga Youth Caucus, among others. The 14 days that CEDET gave to the state president Lazarus Chakwera to take action expired on Monday, the 18th of July 2022. Reporting for Lunta News in Lilongwe, this is Phyllis Chizombe.
In other news, the World Food Programme has said up to 20 million people in Kenya, Ethiopia and Somalia are at risk of starvation by the end of the year, with Somalia bearing the brunt as half of the population is now hungry. Hundreds of thousands of people are abandoning their homes in rural Somalia and heading to camps for the internally displaced. Their fields are bare, crops have failed, and dead livestock are strewn along the roads, and according to experts, this is the worst drought in the last decade. There are thousands of children who are unaccompanied in the camps. Other siblings have taken the role of caregivers, as their fathers have gone to towns to look for food, and the mothers are stuck in hospitals where the rate of severe malnutrition is at an all-time high. Deaths are now being reported, and according to records in one center in Baidoa, at least 26 children have died between May and June this year. And that item also wraps up this edition of our news bulletin. A recap of the headlines before we leave. Pope Francis praises outgoing African Church, discerning what God is telling us today. President Chakwera expresses commitment to ensure the National Youth Service achieves its purpose. Government says Africa Internet Governance Forum meeting to benefit African countries to be independent. And in other news, half of Somalia's population hungry as drought bites. You were with me, Elena Perry. Thanks for watching. Goodbye for now.